Hello, everybody. My name is Nate. I'm an engineer at Prefect, and this is going to be a quick one just about how to deploy a little flow to Modal, which you may know is like a really quick way to just sort of send a container up in the cloud and just have it do stuff. Modal does a great job at running things in the cloud for you. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I have a little flow that takes events from GitHub, and GitHub will nicely send us webhooks. And then my flow is going to like basically just summarize that event using AI and just print out what happened. So let's take a look at that. So let's pop that onto the right screen. And what we have here is not so complicated. It's just this one function called summarize event, and it takes a GitHub webhook event, which is a type that I wrote in a library called ghutil, which is basically just a pydantic model that's the shape of what GitHub sends. When an event happens in GitHub, GitHub's like, oh, there's a subscriber to this, so I'm going to send a payload. It sends a payload that's this shape, which contains some submodels and stuff. And then pydantic and prefect will basically take that JSON payload and cast it into the actual pydantic model, which is really nice. I'm not going to go into how exactly all this works right now, but basically there's a trigger that I set on my deployment, and when the event happens, so let's at least show that. So if I do prefect dashboard open, we can get the UI open over here, and we should see that when events happen in GitHub, for example, let's see if we can find one. Deployment updated, block secret loaded, there's a lot of events going on. Here's one. Prefect, there's an issue that was deleted. So we have all this information inside of here. Here's the payload that gets casted. But basically there's like a GitHub action that took place, and GitHub will send us this payload, and Prefect knows how to trigger a deployment run because that deployment has a trigger that's set to look for some sort of event. And so that's sort of how this is working. But like the gist of it, I saw there was 2 comments on the previous video about wanting to see real-time data. And so this is like GitHub is sending us real-time data, and we use a webhook to react to it immediately using events. And the second ask was to use Modal and a private GitHub repo. And so what I have here is my own little private repo that I made just for this example, private to the world. So that means that for my deployment, I need an access token, which is just my GitHub token that I've saved on my machine, which I'm saving as a prefix secret, and then providing to the Git credentials inside of my source. So instead of saying just HTTP Git URL, you can also pass in this Git repository, which also has this kwarg for credentials, which I'm using here. Okay, so let us see it in action. So if we go back to my terminal, and then we say like, I will say Python main, because that's the name of my file, and I want to deploy this. So what we should see is that Prefect will go grab the code from the source because of from source, and then it will deploy to my Modal work pool. And I guess I'll say a word or two about how I set up that Modal work pool. So if I go back to the UI, what we will see is that we have some work pools, and there's a Modal one, which I just went in here and click this plus button, and then you can select Modal push pool, and then inside of there, all I did was go into Modal, like log in, and generate myself an API key, and that comes with an ID and a secret. And so I just plugged those into this Modal credentials section here, and that's how I got my Modal work pool, and that's all I need. So now I can go back to my code, plug it in as the work pool name, set my trigger, and give this just a name. And now my deployment's created. Any events that I create related to GitHub or in my GitHub repo will trigger a run of this deployment. So let's go ahead and do that. So I went back to an old issue of mine. I tested this 6 minutes ago. If I just delete this, that's an event. So if I were really caring about this, I would probably make the event more exclusive so that only certain types of events would trigger my deployment. But in this case, I'm just trying to demo something. So let's go into the UI now, Already this thing got scheduled. Hulking pug. So now modal is spinning up my container. It'll just probably just take just a second. Another note, because I'm using AI in this flow, I had to save another secret from my OpenAI API key and then set that to Marvin's API key. But let's go back, see if it's doing stuff yet. Oh yeah, so we can check out the modal logs themselves. So hulking pug, we have some stuff going on in here. Nothing secret, which is good. But if by now it probably should be close to done. It's maybe doing stuff. There's not a whole lot to do, so it should be done rather quickly. Let's see here. Refresh. What's going on? Why isn't this done yet? Logs. Disconnected. Oh, I think it's done now. There we go. It's done now. Okay, let's see if we can get the log to come in. There we go. A comment by user ZZ Stoats on issue blah 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 on the prefect H repo was deleted. Yes, that's accurate. Okay, so this was quick, but we've successfully created the deployment that pulls its code from a private repo, and when it runs on a modal container using the modal work pool. And so I hope that was helpful. I will see you in the next one.